Welcome in to 2-4 Drafts, Monday edition of 2-4 Drafts. I'm Austin Gayle with my guy, Mike Renner, ready to talk 2021 NFL drafts. The 2-for-1 Drafts podcast is moving on. We are moving on from 2020, and we are on to 2021. We're going to talk about the offensive prospects and players to watch. Mike wrote an article recently, very good one at that, on PFF.com, a 2021 mock draft that's way too early and kind of worthless, and then also 2021 players to watch, some from the draft class. We're going to look at offense today. Then we're also going to interview Barstool Sports senior NFL analyst Stephen Cheah. I haven't talked to this guy before, but I've heard good things.
Yeah, he does draft focus there for Barstool. They don't have a lot of guys that are actually serious sports analysts. That's not like an insult. That's just kind of their market. Yeah. But he is one of the few.
Yeah, I was looking through his Twitter earlier today. I mean, it should be a good interview for sure. Well, let's get into these offensive prospects here, starting with the quarterback position. So I went through your article. I was super excited to read it. The quarterback position, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, all the top names. How in the world did you leave off D. Crum, Dustin Crum, the Kent State quarterback that practically broke the PFF grading system this past year? I just need to know, was this a miss? Was this a typo? Because D. Crum is ready to light it up in 2020.
Oh. Broke as in how did he break it? He was not even like the highest graded quarterback, not even close to the highest graded quarterback in the country.
Broke it for a golden flash. I mean, can we get on board with that? He's the best quarterback for Kent State since like Julian Edelman. I mean,
he did come on strong. He crumbed down strong down the stretch.
I don't want to.
Crane?
I don't know.
Crane on strong.
I like Crane the best. Anyway, we'll get to Dustin Crum. He'll be the last guy we talk about at the quarterback position, but run through some of the top names. Obviously, first two, Trevor Lawrence versus Justin Fields. Where are you right now? Seth Galina is leaning potentially Justin Fields. I know you're firmly into the Trevor Lawrence hype train. What's your opinion of these two quarterbacks? Is this a lock to be number one and number two overall picks, or what are we talking?
So first, let me just say that this isn't going to have the same depth as usual. The podcasts of the past. I had to go through a bunch of these guys in a small amount of time, but I have watched the quarterbacks a lot, so that I can speak with some depth on these guys. But Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, it's like cliche to like look forward to next year's quarterback class, say, oh, that's going to be a better class, but I think it's going to be a better class. Like Lawrence is special, and now he didn't start off last year well. And Seth Galina, our quarterbacks guy, wrote a great article about his struggles to begin the year. Locking on certain wide receivers, trusting them to win too often and, getting caught up and just missing throws. You saw him miss throws in the national championship game as well. But the arm, the sort of just the poise in the pocket, the ability to play within structure the way he does and out of structure and his athleticism. To me, everyone's talking about Fields is making up ground on him as number one overall pick. No, it's Trevor Lawrence. It's not even a debate in my mind. I would bet a lot of money if you gave me like straight up coin flip odds, Trevor Lawrence versus Justin Fields, I would be willing to put like $5,000 on that right now.
Oh, man. Impressive stuff. All right, so as a true freshman,
they don't pay us much here at PFF, so that's a lot of money.
As a true freshman, you're in a 90.7 PFF passing grade across 424 dropbacks, and then this past year, even better, 91.0 PFF passing grade. Had some bad games against Georgia Tech. I mean, the LSU game, just a 69.0 overall grade for him. That's kind of low for Trevor Lawrence. I thought I had some concerns with Trevor Lawrence in that LSU game. I thought down the stretch when he really needed to turn it on, he kind of crumbled a bit under the pressure, no?
His accuracy was, he was sailing.
Spotty. Bro, he was spotty, dude. And that's the exact thing that Seth Galina brought up in his article, is that early in the season, he said through the first about 7-8 weeks, you saw just bad accuracy from Trevor Lawrence. And I just don't know what to put that on. Like spotty accuracy, like inconsistent game over game is just not something you see a ton. I don't know. What do you make of that, really?
I'm still a fan. So Justin Fields, to compare the two, Fields might be like when the ball leaves his hand, more accurate of a passer, like getting where it's going might be better. But Lawrence, like down the football field in terms of like you go 25 plus yards, is just, he is money in that range. He doesn't miss a ton of throws like in that range in terms of just like wildly missing guys. He'll hit a lot more than he is off in that range. And that's kind of like the special area where he's just on another level.
In your 2021 mock, you had Trevor Lawrence going to the Jags at number one overall, and then Justin Fields to the Washington Redskins at number two. I really do think, just to kind of segue a little bit here. I really do think it's going to be a battle between the Jacksonville Jaguars and Washington Redskins for that number 1 overall pick. Like, I think both of those teams are in prime position to be drafting number 1 overall in 2020. All right.
There's always like someone then where like injuries hit too that sneaks in that mix.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving down the list a bit, Brock Purdy of Iowa State, Tanner Morgan, Minnesota. Let's stop there. Really do like what Tanner Morgan put on tape at Minnesota this past year with Rashad Bateman and Tyler Johnson. What are your expectations for him in 2020?
Yeah, Morgan doesn't have near the arm that Fields or Lawrence do. And so I think that's kind of why you're not going to see a ton of hype for him. Like, he's going to have to play some lights out football to get draft hype when you don't have a big arm, basically. Like, you have to be, in that Joe Burrow tier to get yourself some draft hype. So I think that's what he needs this upcoming year. Purdy's the interesting one because he's played with some just terrible talent around him at Iowa State. I mean, they have nothing in the way of receiving talent, nothing in the way of offensive line talent. These guys aren't getting drafted, but he had an 88.0 grade as a true freshman, 81.8 as a sophomore. Not great, but like, he can make plays on his own also outside the pocket, has some running ability, but he's on the shorter side, but I think he has more than enough arm. So I'll be interested to see what his draft stock looks like if he has himself a big year, because I mean, he's kind of in that Jared Goff tier of like, if he's doing it at a school that you're not supposed to be doing it at, that I think comes with some like that holds some weight to me in the evaluation process.
All right, moving down the list. What can you tell me about the man, the myth, the legend, Trey Lance? This guy's 28-0 or 32-0 touchdown interception ratio is taking over the internet. Is this guy going to unseat Trevor Lawrence or Fields for number 1 overall pick?
I honestly, so who is it? Someone had him in their mock ahead of Justin Fields. Not right now. I'm not ready to get on board with that, but he has that level of talent. Like, he legit does. You watch this guy play. There's like the obvious sort of number there. The 28-0 is what reels you in, and that's kind of fraudulent.
What keeps you there, Mike? What keeps you there?
They didn't pass. He averaged fewer than 20 passes a game this past season for North Dakota State. Had a couple games where he had 10 or fewer attempts the whole game. So like they run. That's what they do there at North Dakota State. But he does have like some easy arm talent, quick release, and athleticism. The guy can move. He's put on over 30 pounds since he got to North Dakota State. And he's like completely transformed from like a 2-star recruit to now. I could foresee him, I could foresee this being like a 3-pronged QB class where it's like there are 3 franchise guys and Trey Lance being one of those.
All right, so looking at Trey Lance's numbers, 28-0 touchdown interception ratio. But here at PFF, we do track turnover-worthy plays. He did have 4 turnover-worthy plays.
Still very good, though.
Yeah, no, still fantastic. So among all quarterbacks, FBS quarterbacks, at least 250 dropbacks this past year. He ranked second in total turnover-worthy plays. Tyler Huntley and Tua Tagovailoa were tied for third with 6 apiece. You want to know who the best in that group in turnover-worthy plays was? D. Crum, baby. Kent State's Dustin Crum with only 3 turnover-worthy plays and a 90.7 PFF passing grade this past year. That's all I'm going to say. That's a good segue into Dustin Crum. Have you watched him at all, or is the grade just all we've got on this guy right now?
I watched him back when I had to do an article about the draft-eligible quarterbacks, and I didn't hate him. I thought he was all right, but I didn't think he was – I wasn't on board with the hype you're about to tell me. Have you watched him?
I haven't watched him either. I got to be honest. I haven't watched him either, but I mean, I just saw the grade. I like the last name. I like the small school aspect. He's got fewer turnover-worthy plays than Trey Lance, who's taking over the internet. I can get on board this hype train. I'm going to ask Seth to watch some tape. I'm going to get in there as well, figure out what really we got in this golden flash here. All right, a couple more quarterbacks to bring up before we get to the running back position. Jamie Newman, to transfer from Wake Forest to Georgia, a guy we've talked about a bit on the podcast. KJ Costello, another transfer from Stanford to Mississippi State. And then Kyle Trask, a guy that kind of came on late with Florida this past year. Of those 3 guys, who do you like best and who has some real talent?
So Newman is really talented, but it's terrified me that like he was so different when he faced good defenses. And now some of that is Wake Forest wasn't the most talented offense, but when he went up against Clemson, there was just like, he looked, it was like quicksand. He just looked like he didn't have any sort of options, was just completely ineffective in that game. So that's scary. You'll get a very good sort of read on who he is this year at Georgia, though. I think that's I love that he transferred there. Just in terms of evaluation process, you're going to get a handle on who he is as a quarterback. Costello as well. I loved what I saw from him as I guess that was a sophomore year back in 2018 at Stanford, when he had J.J. Arcega-Whiteside when he had, the other tight end there that's big who just got drafted, who I can't remember his name.
Colby Parkinson?
Colby Parkinson. When he had those two guys, but two really good contested catch guys, he like racked up a bunch of numbers this year, didn't have near the talent, got hurt, kind of the wheels fell off. I'm interested to see how he does that with Mike Leach. Like a lot of quarterbacks going to Mike Leach, vastly different sort of system than what they ran at Stanford. So that'll be fun. And then Trask, Steve Palazzolo keeps telling me Trask is like real deal. Grade might not show.
He's a Florida homer through and through.
He's not though. He hated Felipe Franks, which that was all of Florida though. So he said he's got something there.
All right.
He said, and he did have some flashes in SEC player. I was like, this guy's all right. And so he's still young. And another guy who's going to look the part at 6'5", like 240.
This is getting me excited about the season, Mike. I love in-season 2-for-1 drafts when we're looking at games every single week. Best and worst performances should be a lot of fun with this crop of quarterbacks here. Moving to the running back position, got to start with the guy we really liked. He was our RB1 until he chose to return back to school. It's Travis Etienne of Clemson. This guy, an absolute rocket ship, good force missed tackle ability. I think he's the odds-on favorite to be RB1 in this upcoming class, barring that he does come out this year.
Yeah, Etienne, I think he would have been top running back in our board. He's just a different kind of explosive than anyone else was in this class. Now, Jonathan Taylor had great testing numbers, but you look on the football field, Etienne plays faster. Like there's no doubt in my mind about that. So I think he could be an actual needle mover at the running back position. So I'm a big fan of his. Floored, like absolutely out of my mind, could not believe he came back to Clemson. That
absurd.
One was just did not make sense.
You were saying it a lot in that time of year, saying you're never going to discredit a running back for coming out early, even if he was bad. Like you're coming out early as a running
Maryland, back. Undrafted, comes out early. Yeah.
It makes too much sense to do that because like you're entering your prime at like 20 years old. Like you're entering your prime at 20 years old. You need to get to the NFL as quickly as possible. All right, other guys on this list. I want to jump to Trey Sermon and Kennedy Brooks, two former Oklahoma running backs. Kennedy Brooks still with Oklahoma. Trey Sermon transferring to Ohio State. Both of these guys force missed tackles at an absurd rate. They have very, very high force missed tackle rates, but both playing in the Big 12. It is what it is. Of those two backs, who do you like more?
I like Sermon. I think he's a little on the taller side, which I don't love at 6 foot, but he's 220, big dude. Reminds me a lot of just the way he runs of Joe Mixon. That's kind of lazy.
Sermon is. I like Sermon too. By the way, I think Sermon's the better back of the two.
But he just has that lower half, like that loose lower half, where he can just eat contact and keep going. So I'm a big fan of his. Very curious to see how he does at Ohio State this year.
You also have Chuba Hubbard of Oklahoma State. He was talked about a ton in the pre-draft process. He was expected to come out, did not. He's returning back to school. Najee Harris, the super coveted recruit, out of Alameda in California. I remember his recruit video. For Bleacher Report had like a bunch of kids trying to tackle him or something. This guy was so coveted as a recruit. It was absurd. His background is very interesting. Demetric Felton, the UCLA running back you really liked. I remember early in the pre-draft process as a pass catching type of back. And then you got Borghi in a very similar way, pass catching back. People make the Christian McCaffrey comp for Max Borghi. I don't know if I can get there, but he's hashtag fun to watch. Fast. I'll say that. He's also fast. Yes.
He's gonna be called sneaky fast, but he's like actually fast. I think he's gonna run the 4.4s. This guy, he can move.
Oh man, that's good. And then Puka Williams, I think has had some off-field stuff. I think it might. I don't want to speak on it. I don't know what it was, but I know it was some off-field stuff that put him on the poo-poo list there in Kansas. But he is another guy that forces missed tackles at an absurd rate in the Big 12. Those guys in the Big 12, man, you can force missed tackles at a pretty high rate. That's for damn sure. All right, moving to the wide receiver position. I don't know who my favorite of the bunch is, but my top two guys I think are Jamar Chase and Devante Smith. Jamar Chase of LSU and Devante Smith of Alabama. I just love both those receivers from winning outside, winning inside. I think those two could be the best in this class.
Dude, I think Rondale Moore is my second after Jamar Chase.
Okay.
So Jamar Chase is the guy that I think is going to be most likely to be overthought in this draft class, in that he'll come back this year. There's zero chance the stats look as good. Like, he's just not going to happen. You're not going to play with the number one overall pick at QB again this year.
That's
and he's going to run maybe like a 4.5 at 6'1", 200. Like, he's not going to wow anyone. I don't think he's a freak athlete by any means. And people are going to be like, oh, was it just a product of that offense, whatever, and just completely forget that he was dominating guys like Trayvon Diggs. Like, he was out physicaling them. Trayvon Diggs, a senior, as a true sophomore in the SEC. Like, Jamar Chase don't overthink this one. He's that good.
The physicality is underrated with Ja'Marr Chase, and I think he could run faster than 4.5s. I thought he had some juice. I don't know. I think he could. He run
was Cameron Dantzler was sticking with him kind of stride for stride down the field, which was the one where I was like, yeah.
But there would be reps though where you turn it on, you see him blaze by Justin Jefferson, and he clocked a better time in the 40. I don't know. Ja'Marr Chase did look fast on tape in some bits there, but other receivers here. Talk to me about Devante Smith. Why, and maybe versus Rondale Moore, the Purdue kid.
So Devante Smith just has to get stronger. He's listed at 175, which if you get listed at 175, that means you're probably like 165, because you're not going to if you were actually 175, you get listed at like 185, because that's still tiny for a guy. And he looks like it on the football field. Now he plays way stronger than that and plays way bigger in contested situations, but that might not that's the worrisome size to be translating to the NFL. So I think that's why he came back to Alabama. Just he's like, I need to live in the weight room this offseason. I need to get a little bigger. And I think he can push into the early mid first round because he's got legit juice. Ran by the freshman from LSU who I'm just awful on names right now. Yeah, Stingley. Ran by Stingley. And I'm not talking about
that game was
play.
Awesome.
The actual just ran by him play. Yeah. So
That was the tape that really kind of stood out for me with Devante Smith. You have Ja'Marr Chase, Devante Smith, Rondale Moore, and Jalen Waddell all going in the top 16 picks in your 2021 mock draft. Obviously too early, but just goes to show that this receiver class is very much legit. Jalen Waddell, another Alabama receiver. Dude's got speed for days, and just forgotten because it's just there's so many mouths to feed at Alabama. He's finally going to have an opportunity to probably see 60, 70 targets in 2020, and I think he's going to make the best of them.
Yeah, he's a ridiculous deep threat. That guy is explosive as hell. Him, Rondale Moore.
He's also great with the ball in his hands, though. He had the highest kick return grade of any college football player this past year. This guy put the ball in his hands and he could do numbers, but also a deep threat. Obviously, you need to see the deep production. We've said that about Henry Ruggs. You want to see it with Jalen Waddell this upcoming season, but I would not be surprised if this guy lights it on fire in the SEC this upcoming year.
Yeah, I agree. And then Rondale Moore is the one I can't wait to watch this year. I mean, 5'9", 180, and he's
another hashtag fun to watch. That guy is absurd with the ball in his hands. I saw someone call him an even more juiced up Jalen Reagor. I don't know where we're getting that, but this guy, ridiculous after the catch. Very, very good in that regard. Two bigger receivers, Justin Ross of Clemson and Seth Williams of Auburn. I haven't watched a ton of tape on these guys. I know Justin Ross has some splash plays I've seen on highlights on my feed, but what's your opinion of these two bigger dudes?
Yeah, I think Ross is probably the better one, but that's kind of going more back to his freshman tape where he was already physically developed. I just don't see the speed there with Ross. So I'm kind of not as high on Ross at the moment. And now he gets to be the guy there in that Clemson offense this year. But there was a lot of hype for him after a monster freshman year, and deservedly so. But I don't think he really took that next step this year. The guy I want to highlight, who I think is almost underrated at this point in time, because the class is ridiculous and there's so many people, and he had so many people around him last year, is Amon-Ra St. Brown. That guy he's kind of your prototypical versatile wide receiver body for modern offense, where it's just 6'1", 195, kind of like CeeDee Lamb and Jerry Jeudy coming out, where it's just anything you kind of want them to do, slot, outside, deep, intermediate, he can do. So I think he's probably one of my early favorites to be my guy in the upcoming class. Now that's a tough ask for me as a Notre Dame alum, but he's just very good.
He doesn't stretch though, Mike. I hope you know the St. Browns do not stretch. I don't know if you've seen that.
Because the lion doesn't stretch in the jungle before.
The cheetah, yeah, it's a cheetah. Yeah. But I don't know, there was a documentary or a 30-minute series on the St. Brown brothers. What the parents put these guys through to make them the athletes that they are is absolutely absurd. To quote, there's they don't stretch because cheetahs don't stretch. They the mom makes them absurd meals every day. You need to go back and watch that. But Amon St. Brown is built in a lab, almost literally built in the lab. So other receivers you mentioned, Rashad Bateman of Minnesota played there with Tanner Morgan and Tyler Johnson this past year, graded really well for us. Chris Olave, Ohio State, Tylan Wallace, Oklahoma State, Tutu Atwell, Louisville, Trey Walker of San Jose State, a guy that you really liked last
Love Trey
but ended up not coming out. And then Sage Surratt, the big monster at Wake Forest. That dude's huge. He's also slow as hell. I think he could run in the 4.6s. I don't know.
He is like a horse, though, too. After the catch to bring down, at the catch point, he just like beats the shit out of other corners. It's great.
I don't know who's going to be my guy in this group here, but I mean, Rondale Moore is going to be everyone's guy. Like he's got that type of skill set and those type of highlights where everyone on Twitter is going to fall in love. I think Devante Smith is going to have a very good year. Jalen Waddell will rise up. It's going to be a very, very fun group of wide receivers in 2020. Moving to the tight end position, there's some actual good tight ends. Like there's good tight ends in this class, unlike 2020. Like there's some actual good talents here. I know you raved about Kyle Pitts of Florida, but also Pat Freiermuth of Penn State is an analytical darling, according to Eric Eager, a guy that shows up well in the grading system and athletic profile.
Yeah, so Kyle Pitts is the guy that you watch him run, and you're like, this guy's not 240 pounds. Like he is definitely 240 pounds. Like he's 6'6". He's a big dude. But he just does not move the way other tight ends move. Most tight ends like run down the field and then one cut and that's it. Like he's actually setting up guys at the line of scrimmage. Actually, the way it's more Travis Kelce moves that way. Like where like Travis Kelce, you just don't know he's 260 pounds. Like if you told me he was 230, I'd probably believe you because it's just like most guys 200 at that weight don't move the way he does. Kyle Pitts has some of that.
What's he listed at?
Pitts?
Yeah.
6'6", 240.
Yeah. So I had someone reach out to me right after you sent that tweet about Kyle Pitts saying he's not 240. He said he has to put on weight a little bit. And he said if he adds weight and maintains speed and athleticism, it's a guy who's on the coaching staff there at Florida, he could be a top 15 pick. But he's not 240 yet. But like, so maybe he puts on some good weight there and then still shows out in 2020.
Gotcha. Yeah, he just turned 19.
Holy 19 no way!
Yeah.
Oh man, this guy's still
he's
very young.
Yeah. So this guy, he may not come out if he's still, hasn't gained enough muscle, but like he's young and talented already. He led them in receiving Florida, outgained Van Jefferson last year. So
his tape is great. Like his tape is already very, very good. Pat Freiermuth of Penn State. Other than his name being awesome, what can you tell me about this guy?
So he's kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum. He's only going to be a junior, but he's already 21, this guy. Okay. And he took like a year at what are those called? Like a prep academy or something before college. And then he's big, strong. Like the people are making the Gronk comps. Now he's not, I don't think he's Gronk yet, but like he has that where it's just like big body to where it just guys bounce off him because he's 6'5", 260 already. And strong after the catch, is pretty fast in a straight line. Really, really good ball skills. So yeah, I think this tight end class is going to be like last year's tackle class, I'd say. Like where this tight end class actually has like legit first round talents.
Oh man, I didn't know it was going to be that good. Wow, that's incredible. Other tight ends you wanted to mention: Brevin Jordan of Miami, and then also Jake Ferguson of Wisconsin. What can you tell me about that too? Those two.
Jordan's really athletic, but I just worry about his ball skills. Now, he doesn't have a ton of drops, only 3 drops last year on 38 catchable, but so many body catches on his tape that I just worry about him being a contested catch guy, but he's like the athleticism you see every single play. Ferguson's kind of the opposite. Dude has really solid hands, not quite the athlete, but I think his production is very good at the tight end position. He's not like some of the tight ends from Wisconsin years past who have just been like placeholders almost, who rack up yards because that's the offense. He actually broke 7 tackles on 33 catches last year, 10 on 36 back as a freshman in 2018. So he actually has a little something to him.
All right, moving to the offensive tackle class here. Penei Sewell of Oregon is becoming a legend overnight. I mean, everyone loves this guy. Offensive line Twitter raves about him. He's still a very young player, dominated this past year, easily Oregon's best offensive lineman on what was a very good group. What would meeting expectations look like for Penei Sewell in 2020? Is it just like winning the Heisman? I don't even know what meeting expectations looks like for this kid.
Yeah, there's no way he, I don't know how to describe it. Like he just, there's no way he wins the Heisman, but like, he's just ridiculous. Like he's just utterly different than any other guy, even compared to last year's tackle class. Like you watch, Jedrick Wills, freak, Andrew Thomas, a freak. Penei Sewell is athleticism plus explosiveness plus strength plus size, like all of it, and then technique. Like he is as good as it gets at the tackle position that like I've seen in college. Like he just,
oh man,
He's a monster, like straight up built.
Wasted on Justin Herbert, damn it. Wasted. The other tackles here, guys that could have came out this past year, I know we talked about a little bit in the pre-draft process previously, but Sam Cosmi of Texas, Walker Little of Stanford, and Alex Leatherwood of Alabama. I will say this, the Cosmi stuff, Cosmi looks awesome in some games, but that chase-on game gives me nightmares about him. He needs to get better in 2020.
I think that's why he came back. He just a little soft. Like he's just a little play strength's just an issue.
And Walker Little got hurt early, right? He got hurt really early.
Walker Little is a freak athlete. Like he was a guy who I think broke the spark record in high school coming out for offensive linemen. Just like a really explosive guy, 6'7", 310. He's listed at there. And you see some of his reps on tape, like flying off the ball as a sophomore where he shows it. And he looked a lot better in the one game he played last year against Northwestern, then went down with an injury, though, out for the year. But expecting big things from him. And the guy, Leatherwood's the interesting one to me because he would have been, I might have had him above Wills in last year's class.
No way, really?
Because he's so smooth in pass protection. Like he reminds me of Ronnie Stanley coming out. Ronnie Stanley was not a freak. Like Ronnie Stanley was not like the guys we saw in this year's class athletically. It just wasn't him. But he was so coordinated and used his hands already so well and just like never got himself in bad situations that like you just knew that guy was going to be good in pass pro. And that's how I feel about Alex Leatherwood in the NFL. So I'm a big fan of his. Ronnie Stanley's testing numbers, he had a 5.2 40, an 8-second 3-cone, and a 4.9 shuttle. Those are just like
disgusting.
Not good, but that's the tackle position though, is that when you have like when it doesn't take necessarily that high end athleticism or strength to win it.
Look, to add some grades to this, Tristan Wirfs was the 4th ranked offensive tackle in all of FBS among tackles with at least 400 overall snaps this past year. And you had 91.8 grade. Right above him was Andrew Thomas. Above him was Josh Jones. Above them all, Penei Sewell with a 95.8 overall grade across 926 snaps. That is absurd. All at left tackle. Yes, in the Pac-12, but like that grading, as young as he is, I don't know if I've seen that before. No,
I mean, we haven't. And the thing is, like, the best part of his game is screens. Him getting out on screens is just terrifying because he finds guys so easily. Like, he's always, like, you never see reps on his tape where he's, like, diving at a guy and falling flat in his face. It's like, no, if he goes out in space, like, he gets his hands on you. There's no making him miss. It's kind of wild to see.
All right, last guy bringing up here is Jackson Carmen of Clemson, totaled 800 snaps last year, a 73.7 overall grade. Got beat up a little bit against Charlotte. 25.1 PFF pass blocking grade against our guy, Alex Highsmith. Obviously, grading profile not super impressive right now. What do you see in this guy?
Yeah, he's just a horse, though. I mean, 6'5", 345. Oh, man. That. The guy is a beefcake. Like, he's gonna, if you're gonna draft Isaiah Wilson in round 1, you're gonna love Jackson Carmen because he can move the line of scrimmage. And I think he's been fairly good in pass pro, despite when, better competition getting whooped up a little bit, but he can actually move. And I included him because I've been watching him all the way back to high school. He was we graded Cincinnati High School once, and he was a senior there, and actually was committed to Ohio State at the time. And just some of the blocks he made, he looked just completely disinterested because it wasn't fair. Like, he would just kill guys. He was so much stronger than anyone he was going up against. I think I still have a couple on my phone that I saved of some of his pancake blocks. They were just, it was like The Blind Side of the movie where he's just running with guys. But he's interesting. I'll just say he's a prospect to watch. He needs to make some leaps though in this upcoming season in terms of getting depth out of sets.
All right, jump into your offensive line. Crete Humphrey of Oklahoma was someone that I think Draft Twitter really, really liked after a very strong 2018 season, but 2019 did not cut it. He dropped significantly in overall grade, earned just a 67.3 overall grade, 58.0 PFF pass blocking grade, all after earning an 84.4 pass blocking grade in the year prior. What do you think went into that kind of drop off, and do you expect him to bounce back?
I think Bravion Roy went into that drop off. I think Bravion Roy single-handedly made Crete Humphrey return to school last year. Honestly, those two Baylor games, Bravion Roy just demolished him, especially in the conference championship game. He was just, Humphrey had no sort of recourse to Bravion Roy's.
Dude, Humphrey earned an 8.3 pass blocking grade against Baylor in the championship game.
Yeah.
That is one of the lowest single game pass blocking grades I've ever seen.
And Bravion Roy was just like throwing him to the side. So the dealing with power will be something Humphrey has to prove a little bit more in 2021.
Trey Smith of Tennessee is another guy that a lot of people really, really like, but this guy has struggled a bit to stay on the field. He's had blood clots in his lungs, if I'm not mistaken, and it's really, really, really slowed his development as a prospect.
It's been so unfortunate because he has like all the tools to be a high-level guard in the NFL. He's super powerful. He played all over actually as a freshman, switched between like tackle, guard, and then switched to tackle as a sophomore. As a junior, back at guard, but like didn't have an off season last year. And so struggled out the gate, but then down the stretch, he was like a top 5 graded guard in the country over the last 8 weeks of the season. Could have come out, but I think he can make himself some money if he has a big, like with a full off season. And now, unfortunately, he doesn't get a full off season again. But if he comes back and plays some elite football, I think he'll be a first round sort of pick.
All right, 3 more guys you want to bring up here. Elijah Vera Tucker of USC, and then the 2 Ohio State guys, Wyatt Davis and Josh Meyers. Give me your favorite of those 3.
My favorite of those 3 is Wyatt Davis. And I thought he was going to come out last year. Only a redshirt sophomore, but I watched his tape and I was like, this guy is like probably second round. I probably would have drafted him. He probably would have been a second round grade. Probably would have been right behind Cesar Ruiz on our board in terms of interior offensive lineman if he came out last year. He's very good. And so he has a chance to be the first IOL off the board if he, has another big year for Ohio State. I think he only gave up like 10 pressures all last season, something like that. It was, and that was his first full season, I want to say, as a starter. Yeah. He played really well. So,
dude, I am freaking jacked for this 2020 season. Yeah. I am stoked. I am super excited that 2-4 drafts is in full swing. We're going to be able to look at these guys every single week, look at their grades, put them in the dunk tank a little bit, drop some guys down. It's going to be fun. Marvin Wilson, when we get to the defense, we're going to do defense for 2021 prospects as well on Wednesday. Marvin Wilson is going to be awesome next year because he was already fantastic. He's like 19, 20 years old.
Oh, yeah.
In 2019, I think Marvin Wilson's going to wow some people next year. And this offensive group is also great. You got D. Crum, Trey Sermon now at Ohio State, a receiving class that could rival last year's receiving class if it's not better. You said it might be better, right? You said this receiving class might be better.
It might be.
Oh,
there is a chance. So of these guys, and it might be better in terms of like top end talent. There might be, I'd say, Jamar Chase, Devante Smith, Rondale Moore, Waddle, Bateman, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Those guys have a good chance of being first rounders. So it's all said and done.
Dude, that's awesome. And what about, so we didn't talk a little bit, and I hate to bring up back wide receivers. Have you watched a lot of Tutu Atwell? I think when I'm looking at receiving grades or advanced receiving production, he pops up a ton. I haven't watched a ton of his tape, but like Tutu Atwell has an impressive grading profile with some good advanced stats as well.
He's another guy who's pretty skinny, and they gave him a lot of 5'9", 165. He was like their jet sweep king in that offense. So he's kind of like a jitterbug type, but not on.
I don't hate jitterbug types.
Not on the Rondale Moore spectrum though. But he just needs to get a little bit bigger. That dude.
All right, we're gonna get to the defensive version of this, defensive prospects for the 2021 NFL Draft. But before we do that, let's get to our guy here. Let's get to our guy from Barstool Sports, Stephen Cheah. He's their NFL senior writer. Let's bring him on. Joining the 2-for-1 Drafts podcast is Barstool Sports NFL analyst, senior NFL analyst, I believe, Stephen Cheah. Stephen, it's great to have you on. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks, Austin. Good to talk to you guys.
Absolutely, man. So talk to us a little bit about your background here. I mean, you're a great follow on Twitter. Recently started following you, looking through your stuff. You also do a great podcast, Going Deep, with Willie Colon. I listened to that recently as well. How did you get started with Barstool Sports and specifically, looking at football the way you do?
Thanks. Yeah. It's kind of just kind of a take advantage of your situation story. And I used to be, I think I was probably about 10 years too early with esports. I used to be a huge Madden player, and that's, what I would spend 20 hours a week doing. And I decided, when I was, 28 maybe, I was like, I don't think I should really do this anymore. Like I can't really take this any further. And this is kind of pre-esports. So I was like, I'm going to start watching All 22. So I read a couple books, took a couple classes, and, I became a little bit more well-versed in the All 22. At the time, Vine was very big. So I was recording clips on my phone and putting them out on Twitter. on Twitter via Vine. Yeah, so this has been kind of a while. So I started doing that in 2015, and now it's 2020. So I've been technology has advanced, and my production value certainly has too. I've put out full video clips now, breakdowns of each player, not each player, but players that pop during each week, and that's kind of what I've been doing for the last 5 years. As far as getting started with Barstool, I started there in 2016. The Bucks thing kind of happened to be a coincidence. I'm a business person. I'm the senior director of ad operations there, and that's kind of my day job. I also moonlight, I guess you could say, as a producer. I produce the Yak, which is on Sirius Radio from 12 to 1 every day. And then I got into podcasting. I produced the formerly named Laces Out podcast with Willie Colon, Dave Portnoy, and Tommy Smokes last year. And then when we had Dave didn't necessarily want to get into that this year. So Willie and I kind of took that project over and have been hosting long form interviews as the Going Deep podcast. So it's been a pretty fun ride.
I would say that's quite the diverse background, but I want to hear the story about how you became a Bucks fan, because you were not from Tampa Bay, which I feel like if I think of a Bucks fan, I feel like they have to be either from Tampa Bay or the surrounding area. You're from around the New York area, right? New Jersey. How did you end up becoming a Bucks fan?
Yeah, so my dad immigrated here when he was, I think, 17 years old from Hong Kong. And in the New York, New Jersey market, they play Jets and Giants games. So they're typically in corresponding slots. So one will be at 1, one will be at 4. So he watches both games. And would root for both teams. So even at 8, 9 years old, I was like, all right, what's our favorite team? And he said both equally, whoever's winning, we like that team. So even as a youth, I thought that was a pretty fugazi way to pick a football team. And I was you got to pick one, and he refused. So I went with a completely different team. I was playing a lot of NFL Blitz at the time, and the Bucks had a lot of new playmakers and a nice shiny new logo. So I decided to roll with them, and it became a much bigger thing as the years went on.
So the Bucks obviously are the team of the offseason. They've won. This is the best time to be a Bucks fan since 03, since they won the Super Bowl. Did you see any of this coming? Did you have any inkling that Tom Brady, was there a time where you thought it was actually possible that he would become a Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and when was that?
Yeah, so I think the national media is really shocked, wow, he chose the super obscure team. But if you're a fan of the team, you see things more or less with rose-colored glasses. You look at his weapons in New England, and this year especially, they cut Antonio Brown, Josh Gordon, suspension, substance abuse issues. Julian Edelman is there, Gronk is gone, so he doesn't really have a ton of weapons. When you look at the Bucks, they're the complete opposite of that. I mean, they've drafted very well at receiver. Chris Godwin, in the middle rounds. Mike Evans, first-round pick. O.J. Howard, a first-round pick. Cam Brate undrafted, but is a very nice player. They've got some weapons. So looking at his biggest complaint, we had that solved. And then you look at the coaching staff, and Bruce Arians is the polar opposite of Bill Belichick, both very successful coaches in their own right. I mean, Arians doesn't have necessarily the rings as a head coach, but he's certainly won. 2-time coach of the year, won a Super Bowl in Pittsburgh. So that could certainly speak to. Then you look at the ties. The director of player personnel, John Spytek, was a teammate of Tom Brady's at Michigan. A good friend of Tom Brady's, Larry Foote, who's our linebackers coach, and he was obviously a player in the league for a while, but a teammate of Tom Brady's at Michigan. Jason Light was our GM, was a scout when they drafted Tom Brady. 20 years ago. Yeah, so. He's actually been with the Pats twice. He's also there. He was the director of player personnel when they drafted Gronk. So, I mean, a lot of things were in place. Yeah, a lot of things were in place for this to happen. I didn't think it was, I definitely thought it was very feasible and certainly had a decent chance of happening. But, there's talk of the Chargers and, even the Raiders, but teams you think that could possibly be a little bit more in win now mode. But when you stop looking at the Bucs record and look at, game over game and week over week, they certainly improved and have a pretty good defense. So they have, I don't want to say a ready-made team, but they are certainly in a position to be a pretty good team with the additions they've made in the offseason.
What's your opinion of the Bucs draft? I know you do a ton of draft coverage there in your role. Yep. I'd love to know, Tristan Wirfs and one of my favorites, Antoine Winfield Jr., continued to throw resource at the secondary, young resource there. What was your opinion of this Bucs draft?
Yeah, I mean, they certainly. It's so funny when we talk about like the draft. Like all teams are like, yeah, we're going to draft best player available. Like we're not going to draft for need. Every team drafts for need, and the Buccaneers certainly were no exceptions to that, especially this year. The biggest glaring hole in the roster was a right tackle. And there were 4 top guys that were, clear cut above everybody else. And they went up 1 spot. I had a feeling they weren't going to be picking up 14. They were either going to trade up or trade down. And they did make their move as soon as, if you guys read Peter King's piece, like they were trying to trade up.
I was going to bring that up. I wasn't sure if you read that one. I mean, him trying to trade up the entire first round was amazing.
Yeah, I mean, that was certainly interesting. I can't specifically confirm how their board was stacked, but it seems like they got one of the guys that they coveted for sure. And that was obviously a glaring need, and they addressed it. And then to give up a 4th round pick, seems kind of rich to go up 1 spot. But at the same time, like there is nobody on the roster. Like when we talk about the offseason, we're not talking about the addition of Joe Haig. Like we're talking about
shots fired at Joe Haig.
I mean,
nobody.
I've heard our personnel staff is pretty high on him, but it leaves a little bit to be desired as far as getting excited about.
Who are some of your favorite guys? Not even guys that went to the Tampa Bay Bucks, but guys that your favorites or your guys in this draft class.
So you look across the board, kind of as far as like team fits and things like that. I really like what the Vikings did with getting Justin Jefferson. I think that was certainly a great pick in the mid-20s. I like really what the Vikings did throughout the draft. I thought them and the Ravens had the best draft. The Niners, especially reading more about how they had their board stacked with, they traded DeForest Buckner. They filled out with certainly a less proven version, but a much cheaper version in Javon Kinlaw. And they had, wide receiver out of Arizona State, Brandon Ayuk. They had him, ranked next to CeeDee Lamb as the top guy. And then them trading for Trent Williams, I think certainly was kind of a big coup on, I guess that was day 3. So I really like what they did there. I thought the Raiders had an interesting draft, kind of flooding the receiver position. They look at Henry Ruggs at 12, but then they also got Lynn Bowden out of Kentucky, who I would think is maybe going to play a similar type Taysom Hill role, but also play a little bit more receiver. And then Brian Edwards out of South Carolina, who's obviously an interesting prospect and good value late in the 3rd round. But yeah, I think you look at the draft and everybody after they make their pick is high-fiving and everybody loves their picks. But at the end of the day, who's going to turn out? I think if I'm being honest, and I didn't love the value at 3, but I think that Jeff Okudah, when we look back in like 5 years, I think he could be the best player, non-quarterback player in this draft.
Oof, I like that take. I really like that take because I thought he got underrated from in the national media in terms of like just how good he was compared to everyone else. Like people even had CJ Henderson reportedly. Some GMs had CJ Henderson higher on their board, and that to me was just. That you're just chasing some speed at that point. You're not actually watching both of them play and evaluating it. But I really like that take.
Right. I mean, CJ Henderson certainly had a faster 40 time, but when you look at just production, I mean, especially on ball production, I mean, CJ Henderson had no interceptions this past season. Not that that's like, I think Jalen Ramsey in his final year had no interceptions, but at the same time, like he doesn't get the job all the way done that you would want. And if you're picking a corner at 9, which is, certainly pretty high for a corner, not unheard of at all, but if you're picking a corner at 9, you certainly want a guy that's going to be a willing tackler, and he's not.
All right, let's go to the flip side of the coin here. What were some like first rounders that you saw get drafted and you just thought, I wouldn't have taken that guy. I would not have taken that guy there.
Yeah, I think maybe the most interesting one is Cesar Ruiz out of Michigan. Now, not that he wasn't, towards the bottom of the first round or, first, second rounder. I thought he was appropriate value for the Saints. I think it's kind of interesting because they just drafted a center last year and Eric McCoy, who had a pretty good season. So are they replacing Andrews Pete? I thought that was kind of an interesting move, but I mean, the Saints out of probably all the teams were the best positioned to take the best player available. You look at some other guys, Jordan Brooks, I thought was kind of head scratching. I mean, the Seahawks make so many interesting moves around draft time. Over Patrick Queen was certainly Isaiah Wilson, who kind of the worst kept secret in the NFL was this guy's going to be a first rounder, but it just wasn't sure to where. So obviously, he's going to be the Jack Conklin replacement at right tackle for the Titans. I thought Cole Kmet at tight end at 43 was pretty high for a tight end in this class. I mean, Kmet certainly had a great game against Georgia and, is a nice player when he's available to play. But, the Bears, I think that was their 10th tight end that they have on their roster. I know Trey Burton didn't necessarily work out, but anytime I think OJ Howard, especially coming out, was a great draft prospect. I was furious when we took him at, I think, 19 or 20, because it's just like, if you're drafting a tight end that early, it's just, there are so many more needs. Tight ends aren't on the field every play. So I personally hate anytime you're going to do that early. And so I think the Bears, a team that has plenty of holes, could have used any other position than another tight end.
I had to take that, with his baseball background, he could be their Trubisky replacement there. He's a little lefty. You use him a little Taysom Hill role there.
Yeah.
That's why you had a 10th tight end into that group.
I am glad to see, not that I actually hope he succeeds, Mitch Trubisky, but I'm glad to see that they didn't pick up his 5th-year option, just because assuming they did and he would have had, if he either won the job or got some playing time this year, he eventually would have been benched and told to not come to the facility so he doesn't get hurt. So not to pay him whatever in his 5th year.
Are they guaranteed at signing now, or is that next year where that kicks in?
No, it's guaranteed next year, but if you get hurt, it's guaranteed. So that we saw that.
I thought they changed something in the CBA, or I don't know what they did in the CBA.
Can't.
All right, Stephen, I hate to put you on the spot, but we recently talked about the 2021 draft class. Do you have any already early takes on this 2021 class? It's a good group of receivers. Obviously, you have Trevor Lawrence versus Justin Fields. What are some early takes on this 2021 class?
I think it's interesting. I mean, we are super far off. Just Jamar Chase out of LSU is seen as the top dog receiver. I think, assuming we do have a college football season and everyone's expecting, big things from Trevor Lawrence, I know that he's kind of slid down board somewhat as far as being, a top 10 pick or whatnot. But I think Justin Ross is going to have, I don't want to say a bounce back, but he's going to be in that conversation with Jamar Chase for being alpha dog, I guess, of the receiver class. Maybe just kind of track Trevor Lawrence and everyone's expecting him, again, assuming that college football is played normally, to have a big year. I would expect his number 1 receiver to do big things as well.
Mike hates Justin Ross. You got to get him.
I don't hate Justin Ross. I just said I thought after his freshman year, we were going to see people were giving him Larry Fitzgerald comps. I just thought that his second year was not Larry Fitzgerald whatsoever. He didn't take that leap to being that kind of guy.
Right.
Yeah. I just question his speed. I think he's going to run a 4.5 something.
I mean, if it's a low 4.5, it's reasonable, but you don't want to get too high.
Yeah.
All right, Stephen. Well, I really appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on the podcast. Make sure all you guys follow Stephen on Twitter at Stephen Cheah, Cheah. Thanks again, man. We'll have to get you back on closer to the season, talk some more draft, and maybe the Bucs doing well for once in a long time. I think they can actually play. I think Tom Brady makes them a Super Bowl contender, obviously. And I think they've also added some pieces in the draft, also with Rob Gronkowski, to where this team will be competitive. Are they better than the Saints? We'll see. But anyway, thanks again, Stephen. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, appreciate you guys. All right, thanks, Emil.
Thank you.